Just like that, Cristiano Ronaldo is out of the World Cup, his last World Cup, his sixth World Cup, and he loses to Spain 1-0. It was a boring game, I'm going to be honest. Most of this video is not going to be talking about the game in itself. It's going to be talking about Portugal, the whole campaign of Portugal, who I thought was really disappointing in this tournament. I think it's quite obvious if you did watch the games for Portugal and just this game in general. But yeah, if you can see the title, it probably dragged you to click onto this video, and I'm going to explain why, because that was not supposed to be the original title. I'll be honest. It was supposed to be more about Portugal itself and the disappointment of a tournament that they had, especially with everyone having them as one of the favorites for the World Cup. Obviously, after the Nations League, where they did beat Spain, but lost to Spain this time. And I'm going to tell you why. Portugal, the main talking point, of course, was the midfield, João Neves, Vitinha, and Bruno Fernandes. And I'm going to say straight up, this was an absolute disaster class by Vitinha and Bruno in terms of the tournament. I don't know who had a worse tournament. You talk about Vitinha coming off as, two-time Champions League winner, back-to-back. Obviously, João Neves did, but the main talking point has to be Vitinha and Bruno, because Vitinha is the so-called best midfielder in the world, and he did not play like the best midfielder in the world. I'll tell you that, and a lot of people have had conversations about him being a systematic midfielder. They think he was built in a system for PSG and Luis Enrique. For PSG, it just looked like he always moved backwards. There was a bunch of back passes, always passing back to the defenders. There was no line-breaking passes that he made for Portugal in this World Cup. And you talk about Bruno Fernandes, talked very highly after this Premier League season. I think he broke the record for most assists in a Premier League campaign, beating Kevin De Bruyne. So it just tells you the levels where Bruno was kind of placed. And you talk about him being the so-called best center attacking midfielder in the world, and you combine all those three together with João Neves, and I think João Neves did play better than Vitinha and Bruno, but it's not saying much because that whole entire midfield just collapsed, and it didn't live up to the hype that it was supposed to have in this tournament. And I know a lot of Ronaldo fans will talk about, that is the reason why Portugal failed in this tournament, and Ronaldo didn't get enough service and whatnot. But in terms of just today's game, you talk about the midfield obviously collapsing. They didn't really do much, and I think there was a Bruno Fernandes stat that he created maybe less than 5 chances, big chances in the World Cup in 5 or 6 games, right? And you're used to seeing Bruno create 2 to 3 chances, big chances a game for Man U, where this World Cup he might have only created 1 chance a game. In terms of who to blame for Portugal, either it's a midfield. You talk about Roberto Martinez, who absolutely failed with Belgium, and I don't think he absolutely failed in 2018 with Belgium. I mean, they did get 3rd place, and that was probably the golden generation for Belgium, and he did lead them to the semifinals where they lost to the eventual winners in France. But I think after that, when you talk about the Euros runs with Belgium, and I think from there it just was a complete failure on that end, and then you bring him to Portugal with now the golden generation of Portugal. When you talk about Vitinha, João Neves, Nuno Mendes, Bruno Fernandes, like there's just so many big players for in terms of just on a team sheet, and all these players respectively do so well for their clubs, and it's just a matter of when they come onto the pitch, it's like everyone plays for themselves. There's no chemistry, there's no unity within the actual team, and I mean you kind of have that sense that some people are playing for themselves on the team, and you have Ronaldo at 41 years old, and it's hard to say it's all Ronaldo's fault, because it's obviously not, but it does play a part when your midfield and your wingers do not work together in a way to give your striker service, and that whether that is to whip in a bunch of crosses to Ronaldo. If that doesn't work out, I feel like Roberto Martinez should have taken extra precautions and should have, substituted him off with Gonzalo Ramos. The substitute with Gonzalo Ramos coming on against Croatia, that ended up winning the game for Portugal. If not, I thought Croatia played a better game. But then this game against Spain, even though Spain is not convincing, and I'm going to say my part on Spain, because even though I have Barca players that are on Spain, Lamine Yamal, Pedri, Kubarsi, you know what I mean? The list goes on. But even Spain wasn't convincing, so I just thought Portugal were just completely awful. And in terms of the expectations, they were really high. And I know a lot of people had them being as one of the favorites because they did well in the Nations League. And I feel like that was a disguise in a way, because you talk about in the World Cup them starting off against Congo with a tie, their only win being against Uzbekistan. I think that was where Ronaldo was able to show, hey, like I still have it in me to do well at this World Cup. He scores the 2 goals against Uzbekistan. They tie against Colombia, and that was a huge one because that ended up changing their whole route to the World Cup, and that actually gave them a harder path. And at that point, I realized Portugal was not winning the World Cup. I don't think there was a chance. And, they beat Croatia, and in a game where Croatia, like I said, played better, they get past them, and then you go into a Spain team that's been pretty underwhelming in this tournament. But at the end of the day, you still lose to them, and that just shows how bad you were in this World Cup. So, I mean, there's a lot of people to point the finger at when you talk about the midfield. Completely underwhelming, and I think this is going to be a tournament where we look back on for Vitinha, and whether you have him as your best midfielder in the world, this tournament is going to question a lot of people's decisions on having him as the number one, because to flop like this in an international tournament, and you have the system around you, you have the wingers, like 50-60 million worth wingers, Pedro Neto, you have a Leao, you know what I mean? In terms of, it's not PSG, but you have a great midfield and foundation to go along with it. So it's not like it's just a terrible team, and there's a reason why Portugal were one of the favorites to win the competition. And I'll make this really quick about Spain against They were very underwhelming. I don't know how it's going to go. Like I said, they need Nico Williams back, because even Lamine Yamal at his time now, he looks like he's about 80%. I don't even think he's playing at 100% right now. And if Nico can come back whenever that is, hopefully in the next game, I think you need him, because there's no creativity. Because without him, there's no creativity on the wings. You just have Lamine Yamal. You give him the ball, and that's really it. They kind of pass around the ball. And to be honest, the best player for Spain has been Rodri this whole tournament. You could probably put him in a World Cup final list in terms of the lineup, and you'd probably put him in the midfield, because I think he's been Spain's best player. It hasn't been Pedri. Rodri's been probably playing better than Vitinha, João Neves, Bruno, and Pedri all combined, and that says a lot from a guy who came back from a torn ACL and is 31 years old, and everyone's kind of saying, it's near the end for him after the Ballon d'Or. It feels like his career is kind of going a little lower. It feels like after the Ballon d'Or and the torn ACL, it feels like a lot of people overlooked Rodri, and right now he's having the better tournament than most of all these midfielders. So it says a lot for Spain and in terms of what they need to fix. But again, the video is about Portugal and about Cristiano Ronaldo. And let's actually get onto Cristiano Ronaldo, because I'm a Messi fan, right? And I think even with my videos, sometimes I'll make my shorts, I'll make my TikToks, Instagram videos, and I say these things about Ronaldo. I'll say, he's out of the World Cup, you know what I mean? And I feel like he's put himself in front of the media, and in a bad way, of course, and that's because the things he's been saying in these interviews the last 4 years, ever since he's left Man U, it feels like he's put himself more into the media and expressed his feelings about the World Cup, the Euros, how the World Cup is not a dream for him. He spoke about France and Ligue 1 while Messi was playing there, or just right after, about saying they're not a competitive league, it's just PSG. And the Saudi League is above them, and La Liga is not as good as it was before. The Saudi League it's harder to score in the Saudi League than La Liga. Like, there's just so many things he's done to put himself in front of the media and get the hate that he's been getting. And even as a Messi fan, I'm trying to stay calm about that, because at the end of the day, we have to appreciate what the guy's done for football. And I witnessed prime Ronaldo. When you talk about Real Madrid, the back and forth rivalries between Real Madrid and Barcelona, Messi versus Ronaldo, I was there for peak times. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of these kids are growing up and seeing the old Ronaldo, and that's the Ronaldo they're gonna remember, right? So, but again, like I tried to keep my calm and not boo the guy, because he's 41 years old, right? It's his last World Cup. You don't want to completely boo him, but. And again, the guy's 41 years old. It's his last World Cup. It's trying to be respectful to a legend of the game. But when I saw this, it's like he just hasn't grown up. It's just like you can't leave on a high. You can't leave with your dignity, with your head up, and just let's call a spade, Because when he comes out in the interview after the World Cup game and he says, I won the Euros in 2016, which has the same dimension as the World Cup. And if I scroll a bit down, you could probably see more And, before I joined Portugal, they had never won an international tournament. In 2016, I won the Euros for Portugal, which I believe is better than winning the World Cup. I mean, to him, maybe it feels like it's a better moment in a way, like it resembles winning the World Cup. But I don't know. There's just so many ways how you can take this and understand it. And, like, he didn't really fully explain it. But again, I think it's more about saying that Portugal, they didn't really have a history before me and before I won these trophies for them, and now I am the one who's in the Portugal history books because I've won those 3 trophies for Portugal. With these interviews, it just feels like he's being dishonest, and I'll be honest, like he said the World Cup was a dream before Messi won it, and the timing of him saying that was right after Messi won the World Cup. So again, it looks like because you hadn't had won the World Cup and Messi did, all of a sudden the World Cup is not a dream. And then I tried to understand that perspective of saying, okay, it's just a 6-7 game tournament. It doesn't define your legacy as a footballer. 100%. We know Cristiano Ronaldo is a top 2, top 3 footballer of all time, and whether you have him at number 1, whatever, that's your opinion. But again, like you're contradicting yourself, and I feel like that is what Ronaldo has been doing in a lot of these interviews the last 4 years. And again, we all know what you've done for Portugal. We know what you've done for your career. You don't need to say in an interview afterwards. You don't need to say the Euros has the same resemblance to you as the World Cup, because at the end of the day, you did say the World Cup was a dream for you, but ever since Messi has won it, it feels like he's had to feel the need to tell people like what I've done in football and why the World Cup shouldn't be the reason why you don't have me as your GOAT. And I think he's always said a bunch of times, like, I think Rooney said that Messi was better in his opinion, and he's like, oh, I respect his opinion, like I'm not going to get mad at whatever. I do think Ronaldo still has a type of hate or love relationship with Rooney. I don't think he sees him the same way as he used to. But I think these are the little things that makes Ronaldo hated by the media and by Messi fans, and it makes it so easy for people to kind of make fun of him in a way. And I feel bad, but it's also he brings it upon himself, and I just wish he hadn't had to say that after you just lost to Spain in your last World Cup. And we know this is your last World Cup, and I really hope, I pray to God this is his last one, because I do not want to see this man come back for Portugal and they are still blaming him as a 45-year-old up front who's messing up the whole Portugal youth system in a way for them to bring on new players and allow talent to excel in the new Portugal system. So, I mean, I really do hope it's his last one, and that's not me hating. I just don't want to see it anymore because you've gotten older. At this point, you're a 41-year-old man. You know what I mean? You got to let this Portugal team grow, and it has to be done without you. And at the end of the day, we will always remember Cristiano Ronaldo for everything he's done in football. And unfortunately for his World Cup legacy, it's kind of underwhelming. And that's me trying to be nice as possible, because at the end of the day, the one thing I'm glad, he did end up scoring his first knockout goal in the World Cup. I mean, it was a penalty, but it doesn't really matter. It was against Croatia, and it was a decisive pen because it ended up leading them 1-0 against Croatia. But at the end of the day, he did his job. He came and scored his knockout goal, the one thing he didn't have in the World Cup legacy. And in terms of getting farther in the World Cup, he didn't do that. But at the end of the day, he did what he did, and he did a lot better than what people had expected for a 41-year-old. So I think that's that. Hopefully this video is not too long. I hope you guys enjoyed. I tried to speak about Ronaldo and speak about Portugal. Again, I'm not trying to say Ronaldo was the reason why Portugal went out today. There's so many other issues. Talk about the midfield. Talk about the manager, Roberto Martinez. There's just so many things that went wrong for this Portugal team. And unfortunately, Ronaldo had to go out early in his last World Cup. Tomorrow is Argentina versus Egypt, or depending on when you're watching this, it's today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys made it all the way till the end, and if you did, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share the video to your friends and family. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.